Welcome back to the special edition of Hannity. The Supreme Court issued the final rulings of its term last week, and don't we know it, causing several liberal meltdowns in the process. The court's decision to end race-based affirmative action in college admissions did not go over well with the left. Here's what AOC is now saying should happen to the court in retaliation.
The Supreme Court is far overreaching their authority, and I believe, frankly, that we really need to be having conversations about judicial review as a check on the courts as well. There also must be impeachment on the table. We have a broad level of tools to deal with misconduct, overreach, and abuse of power, and the Supreme Court has not been receiving the adequate oversight necessary in order to preserve their own legitimacy. And in the process, they themselves have been destroying the legitimacy of the court.
Oh, boy. Over on MSNBC, Reid mourned the loss of what she openly claims is the only thing that got her into Harvard. Take a look.
Well, let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action. I went to a school no one had ever heard of in Denver, Colorado, in a small suburb. I didn't go to Exeter or Andover. I didn't have college test prep. I just happened to be really nerdy and smart and have really good grades and good SAT scores. But someone came to Denver, Colorado to look for me. A Harvard recruiter flew to Denver, and I met up with her at the Village Inn restaurant and did a pre-interview to get to pull me into Harvard. I was pulled in. And the schools like Harvard and Yale that I got into affirmatively. Yes.
Well, there you go. Some on the left are even fighting back. Harvard is now facing a civil rights complaint from left-wing groups over its legacy admissions process, which they claim unfairly advantages white students. And more lawsuits could be coming. Former senior advisor to President Trump, Stephen Miller, just sent a letter to the deans of 200 law schools around the country, warning them that he will file suit if they continue to consider race in the admissions process. Stephen Miller joins me now, along with author of the new book, Trial of the Century, Gregg Jarrett, and host of the Just Listen to Yourself podcast, our friend Kira Davis. Thank you all for joining me on this day before Independence Day. But what a great time to talk about the condition the country's in. Stephen, let me start with you, because we know that the universities, colleges are just not going to give up. They're going to find another way to do this. And the UC Davis Medical School seems to be a template for them in some way, in that they have a template regarding people who are disadvantaged. And then that kind of moves you right to the front. And, of course, the presumption is there that that's going to bring in the people, maybe who are people of color, but certainly perhaps are more inclined to move along the leftist agenda, et cetera. Where do you think, is this going to stop, or is this going to take more lawsuits, and is it going to be a big problem?
Everything you said, Tammy, is completely correct. So UC Davis, as an example, uses a disadvantage score. They prioritize applicants who say they've experienced more disadvantages, but they're just using that as a proxy for race to achieve a racial balancing test. So what you're going to see, because the left they have no respect for the Supreme Court. I mean, you heard the quote from AOC. What left-wing universities are going to do is they're going to create all these proxy tests, all of these pretexts, but they are trying to achieve the same racial balancing, to keep poor whites out, to keep Asians out, to try to have an artificial racial lens for admissions. That is illegal. That is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has held that that is illegal and unconstitutional. So my organization, America First Legal, sent a warning letter to every single law school in America, and next we're going to do medical schools, and after that, we're also going to do undergraduate schools. And we've said if you continue to use a racial balancing test by hook or crook, by any means, to try to stack the deck towards one race in admissions, then we are going to take you to court. Because in this country, it doesn't matter what your skin color is, racial bigotry is wrong.
You know, it also relies, especially the disadvantage template, it relies on that being maintained. That if you're going to only be able to get into a college because you have been disadvantaged in various elements of society, there is then an incentive to be disadvantaged, which is a horrible dynamic. Gregg, you know, we've got here, especially with AOC, It's interesting that, she wants to do impeachments and everything, but there were a number of decisions from the Supreme Court that the left liked, like on immigration, and we didn't hear them complaining about how horrible the Supreme Court was when they got the decisions they liked. Right. Is this, though, what we're going to be hearing from the left? And does she have any credibility when she's calling for impeachments or anything else?
No. AOC should do something novel and actually read the Constitution, because her criticism is uninformed. It's the core duty of the Supreme Court under Article 3 to decide whether constitutional rights are being violated. That's exactly what the High Court did in all three cases decided this week. And disliking the result doesn't make it an abuse of power, as she claims. Indeed, it's the opposite. The justices halted an abuse of power that transgressed the rights of citizens under the First Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the Article 2 duty of Congress to tax and spend, and the loan forgiveness decision. I mean, AOC is arguing against herself. Only Congress holds the power of the purse, not the president. He can't act unilaterally by executive fiat. But Ocasio-Cortez and other Democrats seem all too willing to give up their own authority and relevancy by handing it over to Joe Biden. That is not how our Constitution is written.
Kira, a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people, and as a direct result of the left controlling the school system for a couple of generations, creating a kind of ignorance that allows them, it's very clever, that allows them to keep people ignorant and to make claims that are not true and to just gin people up. Your activism as a mom and in your town has also been based in education. You've seen what's been going on there at the local level. Is this the kind of thing that people understand? Because all we hear is, oh, this is racism, and you want to keep people out. Whereas, in fact, these decisions are classical liberal decisions, about freedom of expression, about not using race, which means we then would have to go to the root cause of why SAT scores for young people of color are lower than the SAT scores for whites. But they don't want to do that, do they?
Well, no, quite obviously. I mean, we've seen that even with what's happened over the last 3 years with COVID, how so many education departments, including the federal department, don't want to release education numbers and the results because they know they were wrong, and that's what the results will show. Of course, it's so much easier to say, look at what these evil Republicans are doing. This is racism. Black people will never be able to achieve anything because I guess we can't achieve anything unless we have our white saviors on the left doing stuff for us. Of course, that's easy to say. It makes a great headline, and it's shareable on TikTok, but it's way outside of reality. But what do we expect young people like David Hogg, who tweeted the other day that it's not fair that 1 million people get to decide who the SCOTUS is for 30 million people, a complete misunderstanding of the Electoral College. But of course, we are building ignorant minds, and that is because those are the people who will be susceptible to hysterics, like we're seeing coming from AOC. What she just said is so incredibly ignorant and ridiculous. It's sad that she is a representative in the United States government, but that is the generation that is being built by the public education system and aided by the progressive media. We need to re-educate our kids towards patriotism. That's how we orient them towards patriotism so that we don't have these panicked headlines. People understand what happened. The Supreme Court is not discriminating. The Supreme Court is removing discrimination.
Yes, great points, Kira. Stephen, your work, when we think about the lives that are ruined when someone is being ushered through the university system and can't do it, doesn't understand how to do it, and then there's chaos in personal lives because that's why everybody wants their money back on school loans, because it's like they got a lemon. I mean, this is about saving lives of the people that have been relying on Democrat policy for 50 years now.
Yeah, let's be very clear about something. Everybody is worse off as a result of the racialized, race-based admissions process we have in universities. When a university admits a student of any race that is not a match for the particular academic policies of that university, the academic levels of that university, you have higher dropout rates. You have worse academic performance, and you have worse professional performance as a result of that, rather than having the goal of matching the student to the institution. And then you have students who sacrifice, who don't get into the school they deserve, and then what does that do? It tells other students not to sacrifice for their dreams.
Right.
Everyone loses.
Let me just tell you, Kira Davis, I want you to be the education secretary for whoever the next Republican president's going to be, because we got to get to the root cause.
Fired.
We got to get to the root
Fired.
cause about what's going on with our public schools. All right, everyone, thank you very much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.